What's up, folks? Welcome back to another of all things Baltimore sports foul ball talk, brought to you by Great 8 Sports Memorabilia and Driving to the Top Productions podcasting network. I'm the host, Matt Trigger. With me is my co-host, Tim Malarkey. Tim, welcome back to another week of foul ball talk, buddy. It's been exactly 7 days since we were last on air together.
Yeah, and in those 7 days, Orioles have taken 6 of 7. So how about that?
Yes, we were a little cautiously optimistic about how this next stretch of games are going to go. We were hoping 4-3, maybe 5-2 would have been the outcome of said series, but swept the White Sox, took 2 out of 3 from the Red Sox. So it was a highly productive week of Orioles baseball. Not much has really gone on other than the games itself. There's not really a whole lot to report on in terms of we've managed to stay relatively healthy, so that's been pretty good. Getting a lot of production out of a lot of different guys over the last week. It's been refreshing to see.
Stowers.
Yes, Kyle Stowers was had a productive week. Jorge Mateo had a productive week.
Whew.
Some names we don't normally talk about, so it's been nice to see the bats come alive, so to speak. So where do you want to begin, man?
I'll keep it rolling off of the two names that you just brought up, and it's really awesome to see the I guess you could say non-household names doing what they're doing out there right now. I would even include Westberg in that, and it's wild to me that he doesn't get talked about the way he does, but he's putting together a incredible season. Jorge looks like he's on track to have his best season ever, especially if he continues to get the start at second like he is. I don't foresee a reason why you sit him. He's making good contact. We already know he's an exceptional defender. And I think that the pleasant surprise is that Stowers has come up, albeit he's been given more opportunities than Kjerstad was, but he's doing what Kjerstad couldn't. And we know that he is a higher rated defender than Kjerstad. So to see Stowers, who kind of was talked about as the guy that might not ever make it as like an everyday starting player in this league, and would kind of be a platooning or a substitute or a pinch hit kind of candidate, really go out there and make a name for himself and say, look, I'm here. Look what I can do. Seeing these guys show up big is huge, especially when there have been some disappointing offensive nights from the bigger names like Gunnar and Adley. And I mean, don't get me wrong, both of them are having incredible careers. Gunner's at 18 bombs right now, 2 grand slams on the year, but there have been some slumps for them offensively speaking. So it's really good to see these, not so popular names pick up the slack.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you on everything. It's refreshing to see Stowers. We clamored for it in the beginning of the year. He got called up. Now I want to go out on a limb and say that what we're asking for is slowly starting to take form in the sense of getting Hayes and Mullins out of the lineup every single day.
Yep.
You're seeing more Stowers, you're seeing O'Hearn, you're seeing Cowser a lot more. It's nice that they're putting Stowers bat in this lineup because he does have some pop, and he's not considered a prospect anymore, and he's almost in what you would describe as a baseball player's prime age years, mid to late 20s. He's starting to discover himself. The Kyle Stowers we saw a couple years ago on those, lesser baseball teams, he's starting to make the most of every single at bat that he has.
He is, and I think what might go unnoticed here, and and it's funny when this happens because when a young guy or someone that's been trying to make it comes up and starts having at bats and playing like Stowers is right now, you have this kind of ripple effect where the fans start to fall in love with him. You know, he does funny interviews, good looking guy, real personable. You know, the ladies love him, and you're watching Orioles Nation, Birdland fall in love with this kid and forgetting about the fact that what he's also doing right now is showing the rest of the league that he has some value. And what's the name that everyone has brought up since the season began? And we've even talked about before he got his shot that Stowers would be potentially tied into a trade package when that deadline came around. And what he's doing right now at the major league level is nothing short of boosting his worth when it comes to that. Now, I'm not saying I fully am wholeheartedly sung on, letting him walk somewhere to go get an arm or whatever we may need. But the reality is that he's doing it at the level where it's going to turn some heads. So, it makes me wonder.
Yeah, I see it a little bit. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it makes me wonder if it really makes you kind of put on your manager hat and think, are they hiding Kerstad down there in the minors because he's he's the the big picture, and let's show Stowers off, you know?
That's a dangerous game to play to me, is showing off Stowers to the rest of the league, but then he becomes an asset instead of a trade chip, and he is productive in majority of the at bats and majority of the games that he plays. And it's like now, oh, you hide under the guise of showcasing him for the rest of the league, but now he's outperforming your starting left fielder from opening day and your starting center fielder from opening day in terms of hitting. So to me, you're almost playing yourself out of position in the trade market. Okay, Stowers offers value as a trade chip. He should, but now are you going to make your offense weaker at the behest of trading him? So you're hiding Kerstad, quote unquote, as you were alluding to. Who are you hiding him from? We know he can hit AAA pitching.
Mm-hmm.
He played 17 games up here and got 17 at bats. Stowers has made the most out of every single at bat that he's had. So to me, you're biting off your nose to spite your own face. When Stowers can help this lineup in that 7, 8, 9 hole and still play adequate defense, and you're not going to be thinking to yourself, "Oh, when Stowers comes up the bat, here's an automatic out," because we don't see it that way.
Right, not at all. And I think that I agree with you. It is a dangerous game to play. But I still can't get away from the fact that looking at this team right now, especially with the injuries that we're going through right now. I mean, one of our 5 starting pitchers who is also, having himself a year in Grayson is only 2 weeks back from injury. Then we have 3 other starting pitchers that are all on the IL right now with injuries. And I know I've said this to you in a text before, and I got plenty of wood to knock on around here. But we're 1 injury shy of being what you would call desperate. And when a team is desperate, that's when other teams have the ability to say, we want more. And that's how they sucker you in to get more. So, what I would really hate to see is to see a guy like Stowers, like Kerstad, get suckered into some kind of deal because we're desperate due to the fact that, we need a starting pitcher. And I think that even with 2 of those guys on the IL right now, back and healthy, we still need to go out there and get a long back end guy. I think it's a very interesting spot that the Orioles find themselves in with having, 2 weeks ago we had too many starting pitchers. Now it's almost like we're skating on thin ice. So I still believe that we're going to see a Kerstad, a Stowers, Connor Norby. I think that Mayo might be untouchable just from all of the reading and hearsay and stuff that I come across and talk about. I think Mayo's untouchable, but I still think one of those big names in Kerstead, Norby, Stowers, even a Dylan Beavers will not be an Oriole come the trade deadline.
Yeah, here's here's the thing about the pitching staff. I I have faith that our starting rotation is going to be okay. If you say that we're going to be in desperation mode with with an injury to another starter, Cole Irvin has had a very good year. By all accounts, he's outperforming what everybody was expecting him to be. He was expected to be a bullpen long man slash maybe spot fifth starter, and he's a legitimate four.
He is. Yeah. And
He's a legitimate four. Kramer's a legitimate five. So, barring those two not getting banged up, Grayson Rodriguez he's got filthy stuff still. Um, Suarez can spot start if one of those guys gets nicked up and needs a day here or a day there. Bradish looks like he's an ace. You know, this is a crazy situation where we have two aces on our staff and we haven't had that in years. And
right. And
I
and
I what I'm sorry, Tim. I just wanted to
no,
finish my
you're
thought.
good.
I'm so sorry. Um if something happens, you have Suarez. Now, I'm not saying Suarez is a 20 start guy. At this point, if somebody goes down, you need to bring Povich up.
Yes. So that's what I was
He
getting
is
to.
he's major league ready. He is
Yeah.
major league ready. His ERA is under 2.6. He's league stuff. So if knock on wood, if somebody goes down, Povich needs to get that call. I wouldn't go trading assets for a starter. Um, you got to give Povich the call to get up here, even if it's for one start. You got to see if he can face major league hitting.
Yeah. No,
That's just where I'm at with it.
no, I agree. And I'm reading some of the comments, and I don't want like what I was saying about us being one injury away from being desperate to come off wrong. What I'm saying that as in I still think we have an elite top three when you look across the league right now, with obviously Burns, Bradish, and Grayson. And then you also have Irvin, who's pitching himself and having himself a year. And I love what I see there. But with those four, the fifth starter, as the field lays right now, is Suarez because of the injuries. You have Kramer on the IL right now. You have Tyler Wells still on the IL right now. You have John Means on the IL right now. So that's five. Those five names right there. That's your five. When I said we're one injury away, I am saying currently right now, if one of those five were to go down, the other three are still on the IL. And let's not forget that Grayson and Bradish are both back from injuries. So it's knocking on wood over here, but it's an interesting thing. And shout out to Cole Irvin, by the way. He had his event down at Barks today. My better half actually went. I'm rocking the shirt with a little Irvin inscription. She got to meet him today, and apparently he is a stand-up guy. He's hilarious and really personable. So shout out to Cole Irvin for that. But yeah, I just think that as it lays right now, with the current status of the IL and the fact that our fifth guy right now is Suarez, there is no one else on this active roster right now that is a starting pitcher. Insert, as you alluded to, Povich.
Correct. While we're on the topic of additions and potential trades, we do this every week, and we like to throw our GM hats on, and we both get a kick out of it. I've seen a lot of uh, wild fantasy trades to bring Mason Miller to Baltimore over the last week, and on Bleacher Report today on my app, I had an alert sent to me that JustBaseball.com listed trade scenarios. I know, I know you're shaking your head because it's going to take a lot. Out of everything I've read, and I forgot to send it to you, Tim, before the show. Out of everything I've read, but I wanted to bring it up to you while we were on air. This might be the closest iteration of a trade expectancy that might mimic what the Oakland A's would want for Mason Miller. He's got 5.5 years of team control. He's got less than a full season under him, which is crazy. But the dude's gassing 103, 104, 10 or 11 pitches into the inning, which is insane. And if you think about it long term, Mason Miller and Felix, that is a deadly eighth, ninth inning combo, however you shake that. So justbaseball.com, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, listed the trade as is Mason Miller, closing pitcher for the A's, comes over for Heston Kjerstad, Connor Norby, Justin Armbruster, and Trace Bright. So that might be like the most realistic iteration of a trade that I've seen published yet in baseball media.
Those four, you had Norby and Kjerstad both on the out of that four, right?
Yes, that's what justbaseball.com listed for the Orioles retooling the roster heading to the All-Star break in about 6 weeks.
I think that might be close to enough to get it done. I would say that trade definitely favors the A's, obviously, but I think that's what it's going to take to get him. I am going to stand strong here, and I am not on the Miller train. I think that he has incredible stuff. I think that he is going to be an absolute monster of a pitcher in this league for years to come. I also think that he is eventually going to need Tommy John because you can only throw a ball 103 miles an hour for X amount of years, the way the league is now. And I also think that we haven't seen enough games out of him yet for me to want to sell the farm, so to speak. So I'm indifferent about the Mason Miller thing. I'm not necessarily behind it and chasing him right now. I'm not saying I wouldn't love to have him. I just think for what it costs and what we know about him thus far, especially with how much velocity he has, I'm not so sure. Now, I do like Helsey, and I saw Zach actually said that in the comments. That is something that I would thoroughly entertain. But as far as the Mason Miller thing, I think that trade may get it done, but I don't support it.
Right. As Brendan just said in the comments that I posted on the screen a second ago, what high pressure moments has he been in for that cost?
Right.
And that's a very legitimate question. Because honestly, there's not a lot of wins that are coming by way of, the Oakland Athletics in terms of getting him that exposure. He hasn't been in the playoffs or anything like that. He hasn't shown that knack for closing out a game in the ninth inning where it's high pressure. He hasn't closed it out a game 7 in Texas or Yankee Stadium or Fenway or anything like that, which I know that's facetious to even use that type of language, but Brendan's right. You gotta weigh out everything, and I've banged on the table for Tanner Scott. I think he's much more attainable for a lot less. I think you can skate on the fact that you could either get rid of Kjerstad or Norby as opposed to both, and still obtain Tanner Scott. And if you want to include a couple lesser prospects, you could probably grab Luzardo in that deal too to shore up the rotation.
Or you could go get Jorge Lopez for free.
Jorge Lopez, that train has sailed. He's an absolute head case up in New York. And the way this team is right now, you don't want anything like that. And while I say that, if the Orioles, if I was the GM of the Orioles, which I'm clearly not, Trevor Bauer would be in Baltimore tomorrow.
And
The dude
that's
is he's just. I mean, he's been rocked once in the last year where he's gotten shelled.
no, I agree, and I think that that's why everyone, obviously, I don't think, I know that that's why everyone is staying away from him, is just because of all of the publicity that comes with it and the fear of adding a wild card to your, your already settled and calm clubhouse, so to speak. Um, but yeah, I mean, I also was with you on the Tanner Scott thing. I don't know. I think about it a lot, and I look at the names of who's out there. And I'm really excited for this trade deadline to approach. I mean, I know yesterday's game marked the first third is now complete, so we are 1/3 of the way through the season. Um,
And we're on a 105 win pace.
yeah, we are, and I'm excited for this trade deadline, and I don't even want to come close to sounding like our boy Jason Lockenfora here. But I really hope that
He
we
gives me
don't.
he makes my ass itch.
I really hope that we do not see the front office blow another trade deadline, especially just because this year feels so much more like win now than last year did. Um, I don't want to see us walk measly through a trade deadline. And who did we even acquire? Was that Fuji pickup last year?
Yeah, Fuji was the pickup last year. Here's my problem with Jason Lockenfora. I've been bitching about Jason Lockenfora on multiple different shows that I've covered, whether it's been football or baseball. Um, Nothing's ever good enough for that guy. Nothing is ever good enough for Lockenfora.
Including
It's
the castle.
Well, the thing is, he got iced out for a while, and that was his fault. You can't openly call the Ravens GM a liar and a spin artist and all sorts of different shit and expect to still have your credentials. I'm sorry, but you're living in a la la land if you think that you can bash Eric DaCosta 5 days a week on the radio and still expect to be open, welcome with open arms up at Owings Mills. That's for the Ravens side. He's done nothing but kiss Elias's ass up until recently. He's harping on the Jack Flaherty trade from last year, and now
Hmm.
Jack Flaherty's having a great year. I believe he's in Detroit.
Leading, yeah, and he's leading the league in strikeouts, I believe, or he was
Okay,
last time I looked.
it's the last week of May. Now I will concede that we made a mistake if Flaherty's still doing that after the All-Star break.
Hmm.
It's still early. We're like you just said a minute ago, we're a third of the way through the year. It's easy to look like that.
No, I agree. I agree. And what Brendan just said, I do remember specifically last year that JLC wanted Bautista out of town as the closer. I think he had even talked about wanting Cano in that closing spot over Bautista. But as Zach alluded to, he's definitely paid and is the voice of controversy on that show. So we get into
But
him a lot.
and the thing is, when the other day, I went back and listened to the audio because it was brought up in a group chat that uh, Jason took a shot at Ed when they were talking about stories of being drunk on the TMI with TIM segment about Wyman falling off the bar stool at Mount Washington Tavern. And Lock and Ford chimed in and said that somebody at this station makes a lot of money off of them. And he's referring to Ed Norris.
Ah,
And let's not mince words on this show here. If you put them two in a locked room for 5 seconds, not
Ed's
even
going to
5 minutes,
destroy him.
Ed's gonna rip his head off. So I think that he gets off on being controversial because he knows that he has shit takes on literally everything.
Hmm.
You just write for the Washington Post, my man. You've been removed off of every NFL coverage show on television that you've had the last 10 years. You're not on CBS or NFL Network or anything like that anymore. You're local. My
Yep.
man, stop being controversial on a 2 to 6 drive home show.
No, I agree. sometimes it irks me enough where I have to turn it off just simply because of him. Matt, we had a comment a little while up there that gave us a little swivel point here about the offense that got me thinking, because we were also talking about trades. But Zach said we need to acquire a middle of the lineup bat,
I
and
agree.
something that I have seen talked about. Now, this necessarily might not be a middle of the lineup bat, but it could be a 5-6 on the back end. And I just want to see what you think about it. I think we might have actually talked about it before, and especially after what just went down with Jorge and up in New York, and knowing that the Mets are such a dumpster fire right now. What do you think of Alonso?
He just got hurt.
I
They
did
don't know
not
how
even
long he's
see
going to
that.
be at. Yeah, I was
Oh, did he
listening.
get hit?
I believe so. I was listening to Amy Lawrence on my drive to work this morning, and Pete Alonso just got hurt. I believe either yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, I think he got hit by. Yep.
Yeah, he was hit by a pitch, and they don't know the timetable for his return. We talked about Alonso earlier in the beginning of the year. Alonso at this point, I don't think would take a lot to acquire him. I think you could get away with trading Norby to get him. I don't even think it would take Heston or Stowers in that deal.
That's why I like it, because I think
Yeah,
we could get him relatively cheap, so to speak.
we could. If he comes back before the deadline, the only problem is where I mean, it's Pete Alonso. The dude has crazy power, but who are you taking off of? Are you taking Mountcastle out of the lineup every day? Are
Mm,
you taking O'Hearn out of the lineup every day? He can only play DH or first base. He can't play anywhere else. And if there's one thing that Brandon Hyde values and Mike Elias values, it's obvious by the construct of this team. They value versatility. Westberg can play anywhere in the infield, and he can probably play corner outfield in a pinch. Jorge Mateo can play everywhere that's not catcher.
yep.
You know, Stowers can play all three spots in the outfield. So can Cowser. Santander can play first base, right field, and he can DH.
And
So
they
there's versatility all over the place.
yeah, the versatility is one aspect, and then also you and I both know that the Orioles front office have these players that they fall in love with, and I think that O'Hearn is one of those guys.
Yes.
And watch out, world, because McKenna is back and free, so don't be surprised. It's going to be a little hard for Uncle Mikey to resist that McKenna sitting out
I
there
think
right
he'd have
now.
been here already though. He's been free since our last show.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I think
He'd have been here already.
I honestly, Matt, and I know we've talked about this before, I think they are really just rolling the dice that Cedric turns it around and that Hayes they can get production out of Hayes when he's used every 4 or 5 games. And I think that is the MO and the game plan. They're really banking on the fact that Cedric is going to turn it around.
If he turns it around, trade him at the deadline. That's where I'm at with that. If Hayes is not going to be your everyday starter, Hayes can potentially be this year's Aaron Hicks.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Come in for a pinch hit duty, play in the outfield once or twice a week. You know, maybe get him one game every series as a starter, but if not, have him come off the bench. I think that he's okay doing that because the younger guys are now coming in and they're producing. I think that there's going to also be right field is going to be available relatively soon.
Yeah.
We love Santander. Everybody loves Tony Taters. I get it. I get it.
He's a free agent after this
He's a
year,
free agent
so
at the end of the year.
he's gone.
He's not going to be here.
No.
If they can get a bullpen arm from him, not even saying they got to be a top level bullpen arm for him, but if they can get somebody in the pen for Santander, I'm all for it. I'm totally all for it. He's hit a lot of clutch home runs for us over the years. He's made some impactful contributions to this team, but I don't see Santander being here past this year. So If you can get an arm for him at or around the deadline, I'm all for that. But if you're going to make a serious run in the playoffs this year and you want to get to the World Series, you got to have consistent bats in this lineup. Now, if that means moving Stowers over to right field and, Hayes is in left for a portion, and then you have him platoon with Cowser, and then when you have Hayes in, you can move Cowser to center, or if Mullins gets going, you have a lot to work with. Um, and at some point, Kerstad's going to be up again if he's not traded. So there getting rid of Santander might be the answer that we haven't really noticed until now because we've been so honed in on is this the end of the line for Mullins and Hayes?
Yeah, I think Hayes still has, out of the three of them, Tony, Mullins, and Hayes, I think Hayes still has, currently, as we sit today with how the season's unwinding and how these bats are, I think Hayes has the most value for us as the Orioles. He seems to be better since he's gotten back at filling that role of a spot starter and going out there and getting those pinch hits in. And over the last, I would say 14 to 20 days, I've liked what I've seen out of him. Other than Cedric's one triple the other night, I have not really had any shining moments for him whatsoever. That triple, it was great. It looked good. He pushed hard, and that's about it. I haven't really seen anything out of Cedric that, kind of changes any opinion that I had a month ago on him. And then with Tony, I am just, it's like the soda's flat. I don't know. I just don't.
That's why I left this comment by Brendan up. If you trade Tony, bring in Pete for the power bet. Now, see, I can go with that, and the way I can verbalize that is, if you trade Santander, trade for Alonso, make Alonso your full-time DH like Zach alluded to, and you can make O'Hearn your everyday right fielder because O'Hearn and Santander, there's not a huge fall off in
defense.
I mean, right field is relatively short in terms of distance at Camden Yards. That's the shortest part of the ballpark.
Yep.
So you could mask the inefficiencies of O'Hearn out there by keeping his bat in the lineup. So you could theoretically do that. Trade for Pete, trade Santander out, and you could get a power right-handed bat. Because quite frankly, we don't have a right-handed power hitter.
No, I agree. And while I don't necessarily like O'Hearn on defense, as Zach just said, I think that the safest position, if we did have to get him, the thing that getting him to play right field would remove him from that permanent DH role and open up that permanent DH role. And what that would do is allow what you're talking about with Alonso and the power bat. But what I really think it would do, and what I would really like, is I think it would open up a hole for Kerstad to come in and be a permanent DH, because I don't think Kerstad's defense is, I mean, I know Kerstad's defense is nothing to shake a stick at. But I think that his bat and his swing is something that needs to be in the lineup.
I agree with you. If you don't go get Alonso, you make Kerstad your DH. That's just where you hit the nail on the head with that. Absolutely 100%. You hit the nail on the head. Pete Alonso is interesting because now, if you would have said Pete Alonso 2 years ago before Baltimore was built, Pete Alonso hits 45 home runs in Camden Yards alone in those 80-something games. But
Easy.
He's still got power. I mean, he's still got ridiculous power. So seeing him for the second half of the year, Pete Alonso is one of those trades where if you're going all in to win the World Series this year before things get dicey, with, obviously Burns is a rental right now. Zach alluded to it earlier. He heard rumblings that 5 years, 135 million, I believe, is what he posted for um, a Burns extension. I think you got to get something done. And I'm totally convinced with the way Rubenstein has interacted with this fan base and the way he's been present and the way that he's bought in and he's immersed himself into Birdland. If Burns is in any type of contention for Cy Young, or I think he's going to be an all-star. But if we have another 100-win plus season and Burns gets you 17, 18 wins and he's a Cy Young candidate, he's not going anywhere. I'm not even convinced that they would even let him see the open market.
No, that's what I was gonna. Once you started opening up that door, I knew where you were going with it, and I feel the same way. And it kind of bothers me sometimes when I see a lot of people think and say that Burns won't be here. I mean, he's on track to pitch his most innings ever, and if
Yeah.
he continues at the rate that he's at now, I mean, I don't see why the Orioles would even let him, take a stab at the market. I think that they would lock him up. I mean, just right now, I mean, he's thrown 7 straight quality starts with a 2.08 ERA in the 7 games. So, it's that's your ace. That's your bona fide ace. And if we do make that deep run and head towards the World Series, and all of our talent on our team can remain here because they're all young, why wouldn't you go out there and do that and try and make another run? There was something
Yeah.
before we got into the Burns that just for offense. I fell into a hole last night, like I always do, and looking up stats and just random things like that. And I did a little bit of a calculation for 53. I don't even know what that is. Oh, I have my screen open. There's a truck backing up with a wild backup noise. But the O's offense so far this season, 53 games, right? We are in the top 10 in these categories. Runs, hits, doubles, triples, home runs, RBIs, and we are 13th in average, so just shy of the top 10. Here's the troublesome part, though. We are 29th in walks. We are 22nd in on-base percentage. That's worrisome to me, and that's what I think boils back to where Zach's at with needing a middle-of-the-line bat, because as we saw in the game the other night, bases loaded with no outs, no one scored. It just seems like we're really struggling in that on-base percentage category. We're 22nd in the league with 304 OBP through 53 games. And obviously, if the walks go up, that on-base percentage will increase as well. Walks are a huge factor there. But like I touched on last week, the teams that are leading in the walks and on-base percentage category are also the teams that are running the league right now. That's what I think our offense. That's the hole right now.
Yeah. It's what I watched. When they walk Gunner, when these pitchers walk Gunner, he gives you Barry Bonds vibes on how pissed off he gets about getting walked.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wants to put the ball in play, man. He wants to put the ball over the fence. But
yeah, that jocking of the home run last night was one of my favorites I think I've seen in a while.
I mean, he just muscled that ball out of there. That was, I mean, now that the dude is hitting off speed pitching like that, and he's not just hitting meatballs out of there. Like, I know we always joke about Stephanie with the 40 home runs and the steak dinner and all that, but there's a realistic chance that Gunner enters the All-Star break with anywhere from 23 to 25 home runs.
Yeah, he's on the pace for that. I don't think that's even a question.
Right, and we haven't even hit June yet.
No. I mean, he right now he's tracking to hit more home runs than Chris Davis, which is crazy to think about because he's a 22-year-old shortstop.
Yeah. He doesn't even have like his full grown man strength yet.
Yeah. Have we scored once this year with bases loaded, no outs? I don't think so. I don't even think any of the 3 grand slams that happened were no outs. They were definitely 1 or 2 outs in those 3 scenarios too. So I don't think so. I mean, it's focus on getting on base, get that walk rate up. James McCann went 80 plate appearances, Matt, without recording a single walk. And the thing about James McCann is, yeah, he's our backup catcher, but he plays more than any other backup catcher in the league. They are giving him almost equal playing time to Adley to keep Adley's knees
And he's
healthy.
not very good.
No, he had 80 plate appearances straight without a walk, and I mean that tied the Orioles' longest streak, Matt, for none other than Vlad Guerrero. That was the last one to do it.
Well, Vlad swung at everything, literally, if it even hit the dirt, but that's neither here nor there. Mark says Hyde needs to play analytics. It's interesting that that's said because this baseball team is built
On
based on the
analytics.
brain of an analytical genius.
Mm-hmm.
So
And with
you would
his
think that if
counterpart.
you would think that our manager would buy into the analytical side of things. No manager's perfect, and I think that he's a good manager. What I'm going to say is going to be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say it. Hyde has been here through the shittiest of times when he had essentially a AAA roster at the major league level a couple years ago. If Hyde can't get us to the World Series with this type of ball team, you got to seriously start looking around for somebody that can. I love Brandon Hyde. Let me preface that by saying I love Brandon Hyde. I think Brandon Hyde is a fan favorite here. I think a lot of people love him. He's good with the media. He's good in the community. But now, this will be the second straight year where you have a ball team that's winning triple-digit games. If they flame out in any form or fashion, you got to seriously consider what is going on that bench.
Yeah, so it's funny. After the Cincinnati series, I read a article that a Reds beat writer put out speaking on this essentially. And the way he worded it, I'm not going to do it exactly because I don't remember it fully, but basically it was along the lines of Hyde is a really good manager to manage a team that is in the process of rebuilding or has just been blown up. He's good at taking the shit and dealing with the shit. But Hyde is not the manager that can take a winning team all the way.
And that's a fair question because that's a fair statement too, question statement. But
I don't agree with
this
that, by the way. I just was throwing it out there.
right.
I'm gonna let Hyde take a stab with some actual pitchers this year, and then I'll come to conclusions.
And Brendan just said that I posted the comment just now. This postseason, now granted it's May, but if you go into the postseason where you have a healthy Burns, a healthy Bradish, a healthy G-Rod, a healthy Irvin, you're 1 through 4. That should win you at least 3 games. That should take a 5-game series. I feel a lot more confident going into the playoffs with 2 aces. But there's that but. If he does not get it done and we don't at least get there, something's got to change.
No, I agree.
That's just where I'm at with it.
I mean, especially when you have a 22-year-old shortstop who is, just hit his 50th career home run before he turned 23.
Correct.
The time is now. Fun fact about that, by the way, 50 before 23, he joins the list of Manny, Eddie Murray, and Boog Powell. Those are the only ones to have done it. So keep that in mind, folks. We got something really special standing out there between third and second base. And I read a funny post on my way home today or something. I saw it somewhere, and it said that in the next 2 years, there are going to be a lot of children in Baltimore with the name Gunner.
And Adley, it wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. I'm enjoying this ride right now because I'm equating this window with the Orioles to what the Ravens had on Lamar's rookie contract. Um, e- enjoy this while we still can stomach the fact that Gunner's going to be a free agent and I guess what 3 years now, maybe 4 years away. I believe he's free agent eligible by the time he's 26. I could be wrong, but
I think you're right.
I'm enjoying it.
I believe it's 4 years.
Yeah, so I'm enjoying it. We got years left before we got to start worrying about this. I do want them to pay this man, and I know you do too. I think Rubenstein's going to do it. There's just something different about the ownership aspect of it.
No,
And Zach just said he thinks Gunner's going to see 10 for 420. Yeah, that's ridiculous money, but yeah, absolutely, yeah. Um, I think Adley might see 10 for 240, 250. So you might be sinking a three-quarters of $1 billion into two guys. And then
and
you
then
might
you
have
get.
$1 billion between three players if Jackson Holiday is anything like he's hyping up to be.
I was gonna say, and then you have little old Jackson Holiday.
And not to mention Burns could probably make that. And,
And also,
Grayson,
don't
you're going
forget, Grayson
to
needs to get
Bradish.
paid. Bradish needs to get paid.
Batista needs to get paid. Yeah. We're gonna eventually have to be, one of these top, rollers.
Yeah, and you know what helps with that? Having a philanthropist as your owner who also,
Loves the team.
loves the team, has a panda habitat down at the National Zoo in DC. I don't know if you saw that, but it's literally he's bringing the pandas back to the DC Zoo. The guy was just on stage to give Kevin Hart the Mark Twain Comedy Award. Like, this man is everywhere and he loves it, and I love it. I mean, we know 3 4 weeks ago he was throwing out hats to fans at the game. Well, we were just at the game on Monday. Speaking of that, 40,000 people showed up for that game Monday. So
They
congrats to you,
did.
Birdland. That is
Yes.
amazing to see. But
Attendance is up 25% from last year at this
yeah,
time.
yeah. And guess what?
So
Daddy David was there throwing hats out again. So it's not like it's a
Birdland is
one-off.
believing. I like that Birdland is believing. I wanted to talk to you about what was posted earlier today on Twitter. It was posted by Andy Koska. Um, I believe he writes for the Baltimore Banner for the Orioles.
He does. He's a good guy.
Yes. There's four concepts being thrown around for Oriole Park as part of their expansion with the $600 million.
Yep, I saw that.
The first concept is the Nest, where to be a social patio, standing room only, like a casual experience where it's going to kind of be like just a wide open like beer garden type of situation inside the stadium. Um, that was one of the options. Another one was the membership club where you get full access to the stadium on non game days and events and all that stuff, and it's kind of like a VIP package. The premium club where they have executive field level seating in a lounge, so that might be interesting. And that the last one was the Logue box, where it's pretty much VIP suites behind home plate. So they got some interesting concepts to make Oriole Park even greater.
So I'll tell you my food for thought on that is that I am a fan of the Nest, the gathering point in the outfield, a hangout spot with tabletops and drink rails and more TVs, and because that sounds like your everyday average middle class working Orioles fan could afford that. The issue I have with the three other options, whether it be the on the field level, the VIP access to the warehouse and the stadium on off days and off season, and then the suites behind, home plate with the padded seats and the catered service. The issue I have with that is that sounds to me like that's something that not your every average day person can afford. And the last thing I would want to see is people with money to blow, quote unquote, going to games because of the comforts and the experience like that, and your average everyday Orioles fan who has been going to these games with the $5, $10, $12 bleacher seats since they've increased over the years through the really bad Orioles, not be able to experience the new parts of Camden Yards, like the people with money to blow could. So that's what worries me about some of those concepts. I would like to see a really fresh, revived area done that everyone can enjoy, not someone that can go out there and spend the money and not care. Because the true fans, the ones that bleed this team orange and black, are the ones that were out there sitting in the $10 bleachers through all of these terrible years. So I lean more towards the option of A, where we can see something that everyone can experience.
I agree with you. And I know that we've been, talking for, we've been going at this for 52 minutes exactly now. Couple of things I wanted to touch on. Um, I know that you had some graphics that you wanted to show, and we can get to that real quick. And we will do the predictions for the Rays and Blue Jays series. Just to let everybody know, we're not wrapping the show right this second, but we will be back again next Thursday when the Orioles wrap their 4-game series with the Blue Jays at 1 o'clock. Will be on 8 o'clock that night, so it'll be fresh in our minds from the duration of that, or the ending game of that series. But Tim, I know that you had some stuff that you wanted to show our listeners, so go ahead and pull that up.
Yeah, definitely. So I, with my lovely lady getting to meet Irvin today, I got to thinking about how awesome of a year he's having. And I was just looking at some of the stuff Baseball Savant does with their illustrators and looking at spin rate and stuff like that. And he came in, his pitches were all the way across at 2,000 RPMs, which is kind of in the middle. So then that led me to, all right, well, let's check out what our aces look like in Corbin Burnes and Grayson Rodriguez. So this first one that I just pulled up, this is Corbin Burnes' spin rate. He is right across at 3,000 RPMs. And like I said, Irvin, who's having an awesome year and has awesome stuff, was everything. All of his pitches are right across 2,000. So Corbin is 1,000 more RPMs faster than Irvin. His changeup sits down here low, which is to be expected. But the fact that he has some sliders and his curveball that are all over 3,000 RPM, that's wild to me.
This is some real nerdy shit, Tim, but I dig it.
Yeah, no, that's wild to me. And then, so that led me into, all right, well, let's see what our young ace, Grayson, is doing. Let's see what Grayson's spin rate is. And I was pleasantly surprised, because now he's not quite up there like Burnes is, but I mean, he's there. He's over 2,000. His four-seam fastball has some crazy spin rate on it, for it being a fastball. I mean, his curveball's up there, his slider's up there, his changeup is down here, same area that that Burnes is at. But I think this is like really, like you said, nerdy, but it's, for me, it's like promising to see that some young guy, that is aspiring to be as much of an ace as Corbin Burnes is, who's more established, that his spin rate is also up there. And the cutter on Burnes on that first graphic that I pulled up is just absolutely disgusting.
And while we're talking about Grayson, I just want to shout out my brother-in-law, Mark. He got a chance to meet Grayson yesterday. He delivered a truck to him. Mark is one of the top guys over at Coons Ford on Security Boulevard, and he delivered Grayson a new, I believe it's a Raptor, something really cool. So Mark got pictures with him and his son with Grayson and a bunch of the ball players. They had to go on the field before the game. So shout out to Grayson for being very accommodating to my family. So that was really cool to see. I'll send you the pictures.
And like, that's another thing that why I'm in love with this team, is they all seem to be really just good guys.
and he's trying to get him on the show. So he did shoot that to me. Hey, we had Tim Kirchin on the show, so maybe we can get a current Oriole on here.
Dude, that would be
Um,
awesome.
okay, I'll take that comment off. Yeah, that's my man right there. I appreciate you, Mark. But to round out our show, you and I we talked a little bit about this in pre-show. Um, the MLB made a decision after 3 years of analytical investigations to include the Negro Leagues record books in merging them with the MLB record books. This is not going to get political, and I'm going to say that immediately. Um, I'll just say this: there wouldn't have been a Negro Leagues if they would have just done what should have been done and merged and let everybody play together a long time ago, because we were really robbed, or that whole generation of baseball fans were robbed of not being able to see prime Satchel Paige, prime Josh Gibson playing against prime Babe Ruth, prime Joe DiMaggio, and the like. There's arguments to be made on both sides, but Josh Gibson took over quite a few records, and quite frankly,
It's about goddamn time.
it's about time. And I'll say this: when all sports were not integrated yet, mainly basketball and all that, they integrated the ABA into the NBA. The NFL and the AFL merged. None of their records stand alone. So to me, if you're not gonna if you're not gonna acknowledge those individual leagues with their record books, just add them in. It's not harming anybody. There, that's an era of the game that should have been integrated. So you never know what could have happened. Josh Gibson could have hit a higher average and a higher slugging percentage being in the major leagues, because
Yep.
from the statistical side of it, the Negro Leagues had better pitchers.
Nope. Yep. And I'm all about stats. So like to me, this was awesome because um I just was always I hated always seeing asterisks, and it just didn't make sense to me why there's asterisks. And I think I read an article about it today. The interesting point for me is that um, when you talk about baseball and how it's a sport and it's America's greatest pastime, and it's supposed to show unity and love and sportsmanship, and it's the whole bigger picture. And then you tell me that we've waited until 2024 where we've kept something separate when it should only be about the sport. If you go to the Basketball Hall of Fame, it encompasses not just the NBA or the WNBA. It's about everything. It's the history of basketball, the sport. And I think that's what really bothered me, is the fact that you could essentially say baseball had still been segregated. I mean, there's the Hall of Fames weren't even in the same place. You have the Negro League Hall of Fame is in Kansas City, and then you got Cooperstown, New York for the rest of the league. So I think it will be awesome to see what other things the league does implementing this. And then also, I think it would be really cool if we actually had a Hall of Fame like basketball does, where it's celebrating the sport as a whole. And you see all kinds of baseball history and stats combined as it should be.
Yeah, I saw a lot of conjecture online across all social media platforms where people were bothered by it, and quite frankly, I'm not, because Josh Gibson might arguably be one of the best hitters the game has ever seen.
I think
And I'm
that's
not
for
just
certain.
talking about, yeah, I'm not just talking about one league versus the other. I think Josh Gibson probably wouldn't have had much of a fall off, if any, if he was facing MLB pitching. Satchel Paige, Willie Mays was there, Jackie Robinson was there, all those guys. So it's only right. People were saying, oh well, if you look at players coming from other leagues such as the KBO or Japan, are you gonna count all of Ichiro's hits as a major leaguer? if you combine his Japanese hitting and his major league hitting, this is apples and oranges. That's a whole different country.
No. Yep.
That's a whole different lineage. That's a whole different system. Everything. So this was here in this country 100 years ago. So we know our history. We can't do anything to change it. I guess some people are saying this is revisionist history, and you're trying to do the whole woke thing. It's not woke. It's just doing what's right. It's not affecting anybody. So I got into a couple of minor arguments with people where I just asked them, why does it bother you? But we've set our piece on it. The Major League Baseball is making strides to make the game more inclusive and more whole. So I am okay with that. Moving on to the end of our show, we always everybody knows that watches the show weekly. We do our prediction for the next two series. We have 7 games coming up, and we have a 3-game series with the Tampa Bay Rays starting tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday we play in Toronto for a 4-game set. And Tim, what is your prediction for the next 7 games?
I know I usually kind of go really hard with these predictions. I think we take 2 of 3 from the Rays, and I think we split the series against Toronto. I don't know what it is about Toronto. They always seem to have the Orioles number. Bo Bichette decides that he's not going to hit the ball all year long and is going to hit the ball against the Orioles. So I will say we go 4-3.
I'm going to one up you, and I'm going to go 5-2. I believe we take 3 out of 4 from the Toronto Blue Jays, and I believe that we take 2 out of 3 from the Rays.
All right.
I just think that the bats are starting to kind of heat up a little bit, and I think we're getting much needed production out of multiple players. So as long as this rotation does its job, and they can get us to the 6th or 7th inning, I think we got that. We were a little cautious, last week predicting what we were, and we went 6-1, I believe.
Yep.
So 6-1 out of the last 7, I'm okay with that. I think if we can go 5-2, that bodes well to start this gauntlet that we call the month of June.
Yeah, and like I always say, Matt, and I've said it and I'll say it again, is keep winning series. That's all it takes. Go get the series.
Absolutely. That'll do it for us, folks. We will be back next Thursday night at 8 p.m. At the conclusion of the Toronto Blue Jays series. Hopefully, we're talking about how our boys had another fantastic week of baseball. Tim, let everybody know where they can find you.
You guys know it on Facebook. I'm sure most of you see my ridiculous spam, but if you want even more of it all the time, T_Malarkey on Twitter. Matt, I appreciate it. We will catch you and everybody next week.
Sounds good, folks. That's a wrap.